This first round of game continues. Still some league jumping clubs down in Texas, and we review the many open coaching positions in Major League Soccer. That and more here on Wednesday's Morning Kickaround. Hello and welcome to the show. You've got it locked into a Morning Kicker on the show where we cover the world's game being played right here in the United States of America. My name is Robert Kerr, local soccer guy. To my side is Jason Davis, radio soccer guy. Together, we dot the landscape of American soccer. How you feeling?
Doing good. Happy Wednesday. Did my mic is cutting out. I don't know what's going on over here. I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm having issues with my headphones. There it is. I just got to plug everything in. My apologies. I can hear myself again. I'm ready for Wednesday, Rob. Technical issues aside, I'm ready to talk about soccer.
Yeah, apologies if you hear my tummy rumbling. That is very audible so far as we get ready for our Wednesday.
You're not supposed to point it out. You're not supposed to bring attention to it. You should just pretend like it's not happening.
It's not happening. No technical difficulties. We're feeling great. We're rocking here on a Wednesday. Shout out to all the new subscribers. Those numbers are climbing very nicely. So all the new people, welcome aboard. And an MK Ultras, thank you for supporting the program. The Morning Kickaround Discord server, hotting up with all the new members.
Don't forget to tell people that if we get to our goal, which is 5 members during the live show, we will do a bonus members only extra time afterwards where we can dive into some of the things that we don't get to today. I know there's lots of things out there in American soccer. We're about to hit the playoff season in USL. And I know we talked about that a little bit, but I think there are other stories there. Obviously, Major League Soccer continues to be, fascinating on a couple levels. On the field, sure, if you care about that, but obviously off the field, right? There's stories out there. We're going to get to some of them, but I think other big picture items could deserve some discussion. So become a member, become an MK Ultra, join the community, get access to all the stuff Rob just told you about, and then we get extra stuff after this show is over.
That would be fantastic. We would love to provide more content. We are going to talk about Messi comments in the news about loosening purse strings. We're going to talk about the more than a half a dozen MLS head coaching jobs that are available, and some Gio Reyna. He poked his head out and had a few words to say. That and more. I think I'm just ready to get to it. We ready to get to it? Should we just kick off the show? Let's kick some long balls. Let's do it. Monday, Wednesday. Let's do it. MLS first round of the playoffs 2025 continues. It is a 3-game series, and the first games continued last night as NYCFC beat Charlotte 1-0 over the Wilfred Zaha-less Charlotte. And tonight we have LAFC versus Austin to round up that first round of these games. What are your thoughts on what we've seen so far? And does it seem like it's dragging on?
Does it seem like it's dragging on? That's what you want to throw at me? Is it dragging on? Yeah, I mean, obviously, look, we started playing the first game of the series on Friday when Inter Miami beat Nashville, and it is now Wednesday, and we are finishing up the first game of the first round with this Austin FC, LAFC situation. Yeah, it's dragging on. We've talked about the schedule. I don't love it. I don't think it's the right way for MLS to do it. We skipped over Saturday completely, and maybe there's some wisdom there with college football eating up so much oxygen, but of course also Sunday has football, and MLS played on Sunday. So I look, I'm a sicko. Like I'm dialed in. I'm gonna watch the games if I can get some time away from my family. They are always on top. They're always asking for my attention, my family, and all I want to do is watch some soccer. But I understand why some people would be frustrated by this schedule. I understand why some people would be confused by this. At the same time, right, we get normalized to stuff over years and years and years of doing it. And you can't say, like, Major League Baseball doesn't have a protracted playoff season, Rob. we're nearly into November, right? And the World Series is about to hit Game 5, and it's like that's how long it takes to figure out who's the baseball champion. When it's, I know we're playing in LA and inside in Toronto, so they don't have issues with weather. But what if these games were being played in Kansas City? What if they were being played in New York? What if they were being played in Boston?
Yeah,
So
last night with the 6-hour World Series game that happened last night. Imagine if that wasn't in LA. What if that was in New York or something like that? That would be pretty crazy.
Yeah. 2 nights ago for that one. But yeah, that look, and we accept that because it's our tradition and it's our history. And this is the thing that MLS, I think, has messed up. Although I understand why they want to be nimble as they intend to try to grab attention and make it work in a country that doesn't always give soccer much consideration. It's that issue of, if you don't repeat a pattern, people can't get accustomed to it and they can't normalize it and they can't accept it for what it is. And again, this is also the issue with switching the calendar, which is tangential to the conversation we're having. But the argument for switching the calendar is that you take your most important games out of late fall when they're competing with both kinds of football and the basketball and the baseball, and you're potentially at bad weather, and you move it to a better period for this. May, June is when we will be doing the playoffs. But if you do that, you turn over everybody's habits again, and you're asking a bunch of people who have spent 30 years supporting MLS and going out during the summer and watching the playoffs in the fall to change how they consume your league. Is it worth it? That's a really tough question. I don't know if a lot of people really have a clear grasp on the answer.
The timeless tale is the juice worth the squeeze. Is the temporary pain worth the long-term gain? It's hard to say. And I mean, it's almost one of those topics that we could talk into oblivion. I mean, all the different, I know that there's obviously a limitless pro rel things that people have their theories on what might work, just like so the playoffs are the same way. Like, oh, we could do it like this and we avoid the November break and we do this, that, and the other. But it's always a pros and cons. There's no clean solution to this unless you reduce the size. Reduce the size is the key, I think.
If you want to give MLS at least a little bit benefit of the doubt, you can say they've always been like this. The league has always been changing and morphing and switching and growing and contracting at one point, and then changing its playoff format, then changing that format again and adding games. And why are we doing a best of 3 series? Anybody?
I think apparently they think that getting both teams in the first round a home playoff game is
a major part of it. Yes, of course. I mean, I'm being rhetorical here, right? I'm kind of just throwing it out there because, again, they've just changed the format. Why? Because of a reason, but it's a legitimate reason to do it. I mean, that's in the eye of the beholder. And this is a league that has been climbing uphill for a very long time and has been willing to change as it's grown because it doesn't want to be locked into something that isn't working. And what I was going to say is that while at least MLS always has been changing, some of these other sports are suddenly in this era where, like, we got to change everything. Like, we're losing young people. They're not watching our sports anymore. And we've got to do this and that. I mean, just think about the NBA, for example. And I have no beef with the NBA and I understand why they're doing it, but they introduced a whole ass tournament in the middle of the season, replicating what soccer does because they think this is a way to generate more excitement during a long 82-game regular season where people might lose interest, right? It's another thing to sell to corporate sponsors. It's another way to bring money in the door. And that's a thing that MLS has had to deal with, is their basic state is change. At the same time, there will be moments when you can go, okay, let's just stay the course for a while. And I don't know, maybe the calendar change will create an opportunity for that, where you set something and then you just let it be for a while so people can get accustomed to it and we can form our habits around it. Again, I'm an MLS person. I'm watching the games. I'm not going to be complaining too much. I get to turn on my Apple TV and see every game in high definition with quality broadcasts. And, it may not be always timed perfectly for me, but hey, I'm going to make an effort.
Speaking of watching the games, that game last night in Carolina, a lot of empty seats there. Got to say, this came up in the Morning Kickaround Discord server about how teams sell playoff games, and clearly MLS still need a lot of more lead-in time to sell these buildings out, because that game was pretty sparsely populated from what I saw.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I think it is easy to take shots at MLS for an inability to fill up a stadium for a playoff game. That's a giant football stadium. Let's
On a
remember that.
Tuesday.
Yeah, it's a Tuesday. I mean, somebody again, the discussion about flipping the calendar. I was engaged in this a little bit on Blue Sky, and there were people who said, "Oh, football fans go out and fill an 80,000 seat stadium in the middle of December for games, right? It's 12 degrees outside. They're like, let's go to the Chiefs game." Those are habits born of tradition. Those are commitments born of a deep connection to a team that has been in that place for the last 60, 70 years, right? We're talking about culture, and building culture is hard. And MLS may have had 30 years, but it's never been resting for 30. It hasn't been resting for 30 years, just sort of baking in. And the whole time it's had to compete with the NFL and the NBA and Major League Baseball. So again, do you give MLS a pass on something like that? It's Tuesday. It's, maybe the weather's not super great in Charlotte. I don't know what that was like. You don't have any lead on time. Again, is this a mark against MLS, or is it a commentary on soccer's place in America, or should we be looking at this through a different lens? It's tough.
It really is tough. I mean, which thing comes first? But as far as the action on the field, round one, game one continues. The culmination of this first round of games, LAFC versus Austin, and in the second game in this best of 3 series resumes 3:30 on Saturday afternoon. Shifting gears over to Texas now, as some teams have been jumping around leagues. We'll start with the newest news. Texoma FC of USL 1, after just one season, self-relegate down to the Amateur League USL 2.
Yeah, this is not ideal, right? Now, I'll point this out. And I said this in the Discord when this came up, when we got this news, that when we did our big questions facing USL for Division 1 and Pro Rel that you can watch on the channel, in that video, we talked about the 7 teams coming into USL League 1 in 2026. And with 14 teams, you add 7. What is 14 plus 7, Rob? Math is hard.
21.
21.
You're not a blackjack player, are you?
I was joking. You don't do live math on broadcast. It's always a bad idea. Your brain will never not let you down. What I was going to say is that when we did that video, I didn't say 14 teams now, add 7, that's 21. There will be 21 teams in 2026, 27, 28, whenever they launch these things. Because we knew, because American soccer knows that stuff like this happens all the time. That teams either disappear, drop off the map, or self-relegate in the case of Texoma. I guess you could say it's at least good that the name of the team, that the identity of the team is not going away. They are going to play a short season. They're going to play amateur soccer, but they're not going away. There's something to that. It says in the statement that they're committed to their youth programs and their academy, ensuring local players have a clear pathway to higher levels of soccer. They mentioned Vermont Green because that's obviously the story of American soccer over the last couple months. They play in League 2. This is where Texoma is going. And they're saying we can be important to our community as a League 2 team. Just look at Vermont Green. But it's the last sentence of this, Rob, that is interesting. We are grateful for the incredible support from our fans and community and look forward to sharing more details soon, including exciting news from the club's ownership about long-term investment in infrastructure in the future of League 1 in North Texas. So even though this team based in Sherman, Texas is going away, they're saying we're going to be investing in League 1 in North Texas somewhere else. Now, put together this map, very rough map. It's tough because, getting it in the right framing is a difficult thing. But you can see at the top of the map in Sherman, Texas, that's where Texoma is based. Now no longer playing professional soccer. You can see the McKinney Chupacabras there right in the middle. That's McKinney, Texas. That's a team that is moving from NPSL. To League 2. They've announced that.
Yep.
They decided to switch the leagues. That mark right next to Chupacabras in Princeton, that's basically Collins County. So very close to McKinney is Collins County, where we have had rumors and did a story and reported a story that there's some sense something's happening there. That would be my guess, that with the Texoma ownership, that's probably where they're going, right? I mean, we don't have anything else to go on. That's just speculation right now, but that would make sense.
It almost seems like Texoma is, and I mean, who knows what the details are yet of the business arrangements, but it almost sounds like calling dibs on two different places here. Like, we don't want to evacuate this place. They have, I know Texoma FC have a pretty robust youth system, and they're doing their
Yeah.
thing there. They've sent assurances to those families, but also then like calling dibs on maybe another place is an interesting move.
Yeah. By the way, sorry, my wires got crossed. Chris is right. We're talking about Lubbock that's switching to USL2, not McKinney. McKinney was in USL2 last year. So it's the Lubbock Matadors, I believe, are switching. My apologies. I believe that's another Hitch team, and that's probably where my wires got crossed, but that's a mistake. My apologies. So McKinney, USL, doesn't matter. McKinney's a USL League 2 team. Right now, Texoma is going to be a USL League 2 team, so you'll have some local rivalry potential there. I also put Atletico Dallas on this map just so you get a sense of where they're going to be in Dallas playing at the Cotton Bowl. And originally they were set for Garland, which you can see there as a suburb of Dallas. I did not put the logo, but you can see Frisco there. That's where FC Dallas is based, just to the west of McKinney. So you've got a lot of stuff happening in North Texas, is all I'm going to say, without making any judgments about it. And then you can't really see Fort Worth, but we know there's also an effort to put a team in Fort Worth, just to the west of Dallas in the Metroplex. So lots going on.
I know you said it's dangerous to do math live during a show, but how many teams is this now in this, like, maybe our sort of area? So we got Texoma, McKinney, Dallas, FC Dallas. So we got 4 or 5 high-level teams all within an hour of each other. That seems like an impressive kind of landscape for people. Like, that's definitely going to be a battle for eyeballs and butts in seats in that area.
Well, so is that how we should look at it, Rob? Like, so there have been times in the history of soccer in America where you would say this might not be great. That this might be, now look, you only have a handful of these, or only a couple of these are professional outfits, and we don't have that orange mark is not a team yet. That's just speculation about Collins County. But you have Texoma is going to be amateur now. McKinney is amateur. Atletico Dallas is going into the USL Championship. That's a professional outfit. Obviously, FC Dallas and Frisco, an MLS team. And then Fort Worth, whatever happens there. Is this really, now, the romantic soccer fans in us, we want to say, well, of course, this is what we should be doing. Again, this is what Dot the Map is all about. Like, we get an opportunity here to really talk about the potential of these places. Like, we get to say, why shouldn't a city like Dallas, a big city, not just in terms of the number of people in the region, but geographically, why shouldn't they have this many pro teams? Shouldn't this be the goal? And if these people can't do it, well, then somebody else should step in and try. In other words, don't not try, because it might collapse. Somebody is going to grab soccer fans. Somebody is going to have some success. And if that doesn't work, somebody else might step in eventually to challenge them again. And that's the way it should go.
Let's not lose sight of what might be the bigger story here. Is this puts USL League One's table at 20 teams for 2026, provided no other teams self-relegate, go out of business, or otherwise. USL League One 2026's table will be 20 teams, and hopefully, fingers crossed, all those new expansion teams, or 6 or 7 new ones coming into USL League One. Hopefully none of them are in the situation that Texoma FC finds himself in, where they feel the need to relegate. They had an up and down season on the field. I know the attendance wasn't doing all that well there, and hopefully that is the end of a chain of teams having to do this to themselves. And that would be a huge step. I think that if we get to 2026 and there's or any season where there's no teams shuttering their doors or relegating themselves because of performance,
I mean, look, again,
I think that we should champion that when that happens.
We can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, right? We have to be willing to fail on some level. But again, I've also covered soccer long enough that I've seen so many clubs die, and that feels like a tragedy every time it happens. And it also feels on some level like you're salting the earth every time it happens. That a club pops up and has some success and grabs some fans, and people get excited, and it gets local news coverage. And then 2 years later, it collapses under the financial weight of running professional soccer. And then the fans go, well, soccer doesn't work here. I guess we'll not care about soccer anymore. And I don't know that that's always the case, right? Like, obviously, it's possible that you could have something fail and then, with the right plan, with the right people, with the right approach, restart the engines and it work. And maybe this is a different era of American soccer where that is possible, as opposed to previous eras where if a team came and went, you went, well, I guess that market's dead. That may not be the case anymore. And I don't want to be I don't want to be defeatist in that regard, right? I don't think it's good when clubs die. I don't like adding to that list. It's a big graveyard of dead American soccer clubs. It runs deep, the number of dead American soccer clubs, and I don't want to add to that list. I want every club to succeed, but you can't guarantee success. So why don't you just say, well, we're going to take a shot at this? And in this case, and look at, say, the Richmond Kickers, right? A team that goes back to the 90s, one of the older professional American soccer clubs, because that's as deep as we go with continuing with clubs that have operated continually. The Richmond Kickers realized we can't do it in the USL Championship. This is too much for us. Financially, we can't carry this weight. Let's go down to League One, where the salaries are lower and the costs are lower. And I don't know that they're thriving, but we don't have a sense that the Richmond Kickers are disappearing. They're not going anywhere. The Ukrop family is still invested in soccer in Richmond, and this is their professional outlet. And if there is a place for them to go that isn't dissolution, we should be glad about that, right? Again, better to have a system that is promotion and relegation where clubs are going up and down because of their on-field merit. But if we do have an environment where the financials are difficult, where the economics are difficult, if a club can't cut it in one division, we don't want them to pull the plug completely. We want them to say, well, let's self-relegate. Let's do what Texoma is doing. That would have been, I would have preferred that for San Diego Loyal. I would have preferred that I would have preferred that for the team I'm wearing right now, St. Louis Football Club. Like, you can't
they just walked
operate
away
on the same like you can't be at the same level you want to be when the MLS team comes into town. I know there's some crossover in ownership between this team and the MLS team, which is probably what really killed them. But I would prefer an environment where a team like St. Louis Football Club can say, you know what, we're going to continue to exist. Our badge will still be on stuff. We'll have players out there running around in our uniforms. We just won't be playing in the same division because it doesn't make sense for us anymore.
It's hard to say because we want to see results now, but it's almost like we pick our head up in 10 years and they've added 5, lost 2, added 5, lost 2, or something like that. And we'll see where we are in 10 years and see how dotted the map is. But moving on to our third long ball here on Wednesday, there was a new Gio Reyna interview. He sat down with the AP. And he's talking about still wanting to dig in and get into the window for next year's World Cup.
He did say that. He also said this, which is what really got people buzzing on social media and out there in the American soccer internet world. It says, asked if he'd do things differently if he had the chance again. This was about the 2022 World Cup. And there's some context there about, obviously, the whole he wasn't playing, his parents got upset. This doesn't mention the team vote that was disclosed after the fact, where more than half the team was ready to boot Gio Reyna off the team because of his lack of effort in the build-up to the World Cup. But asked if he'd do something differently if he had the chance again, Reyna told the AP, maybe in certain ways, but I'm not just going to sort of sit here and take all the blame for something that was made out to be completely my fault, which I believe it wasn't, and also my family's too. And look, there's a thing about, like, if you feel righteous, if you feel like you're in the right, if you feel you've been hard done by, if you feel like the world got it wrong, I understand that mentality. I don't think there is a preponderance of evidence that the way we view that situation is wrong, but that's Gio's feeling. But this is a matter of being discerning about when it's right to say something. It is 2025. A reporter asked you, and maybe you didn't want to deal with it at all, and you don't love being asked. But the right response here, Rob, isn't, well, it wasn't all my fault. It was. What are you talking? I don't want to take blame for the. The response is that's the past. That's done. I'm moving on. I want to make the World Cup team in 2026. Period. That's it. That's
Yeah.
done.
Yeah, especially how messy it was, and that's obviously one of the biggest flashpoints of your career, and it didn't go well, clearly. I think you're just saying, I don't really want to think about that. I don't really want to talk about that.
He doesn't
Things
have.
happened. It was
Look,
messy. Let's
he's
move on. And it's wild that he's only
clearly
22. So much life has happened to this guy. He's only 22.
clearly a talented player. His talent is undeniable, but his attitude is wrong. And it has not helped him. And if you want to say like U.S. Soccer did him wrong, Greg Berhalter mishandled it, been very critical of Greg Berhalter for what he did when he came back from the World Cup. He should not have handled it that way. Berhalter
No.
screwed it up.
Oh, yeah.
But so did Gio Reyna, clearly. Right? Obviously, so did the Reyna family, or at least, his parents screwed up dramatically. But even if you're like, oh, well, U.S. Soccer handled it wrong or Berhalter handled it wrong, think about the fact the man has not played 90 minutes of soccer in one game since before the 2002 World Cup. Now,
Yeah, I
some of
was going to say
injury.
that's really damning.
Some of it is injury, but some of it clearly is the fact that he has never managed to convince a coach that he deserves to play, that he's going to bring to the team what is needed for the team to succeed. And I've said this, I said this recently when this news popped up. Gio makes it so hard to root for him. He makes it so difficult for me to go, I really want Gio Reyna to thrive and to succeed. And on a human level, but obviously just as a fan of the team who sees Gio Reyna as a potentially difference-making kind of player for the U.S. men's national team, because that's the talent he has. But Gio, goddammit, like, just shut up. Just put your head down and play games. I don't know if he asked for this interview. You were asking me before the show, Rob, like, what was the context for this interview? It's from the AP. He just joined Gladbach. Is Gladbach making him available? Are Gio's people saying, you know what you need to do? Go out there and do some press? Because if they said that, that's some bad advice. That was the wrong thing to do.
Yeah, I can't see what the upside is. I was like, does he have a charity? Does he have some sort of event? Does he have some sort of a thing that he was introducing? And then the conversation veered over to like, oh, remember when in the World Cup this terrible, situation played out? I can't see any of that. So I don't know what new was brought to this, unless a reporter just happened to request him, hey, I want to get some clicks over in the United States. Let's get Gio onto the on here, and let's get some quotes from him. Because I was going to say, never have I knew it was going to be a long shot. I'd kind of like, put him on the back shelf in my brain. Like he'd have to have just like an unreal season at Gladbach to get himself back in the picture. But what, like you said, when you see the details of not playing 90 minutes for years and years and years, and then like the information that came out that he had like the slowest sprint speeds in an entire league, in entire Germany, he was the slowest player. And so like between work ethic, injuries, belief from coaches, and then like physical attributes of speed, like those are all like, that's a big pile of going against you. And I'd love for him to get into his groove and be at his peak when we get to the World Cup. But that seems longer shot than ever has until reading this.
Look, it almost doesn't matter how you parcel out the blame for what happened in 2022, or if you even think Gio Reyna is a malcontent, right? That's the judgment of some people, that he's a bad player, a bad mentality. He doesn't have the work, whatever attributes you want to label him with that are negative and judgmental. It doesn't matter, because the evidence is he doesn't play. And when he does play, he's not effective enough to demand more playing time at a level that would get us to a place of, oh, he's pushing his way back into the U.S. men's national team. We are so far from that right now. No one would put him on their 26-player roster right now for the World Cup that's happening in how many months? Again, live math. How many months, Rob? It's not that far away, and yet nobody's like, Gio Reyna is going to be in that team, because we don't have any evidence that he deserves a place in that team. We have no reason to think that Mauricio Pochettino, a man who's talked about culture and commitment and showing up for your country, would put this kind of player in his World Cup team. It has nothing to do with my personal opinion about Gio Reyna. That's what the evidence is telling me.
Yeah, there isn't some like underlying stat like in his favor. Like when he does play, all these goals and all these wonderful things happen. Like looking for a silver lining, I'm scraping the sides and it's getting hard. And obviously, lots of believers, lots of people liked watching those glimpses of him when we've gotten them. But it's been a while, and hopefully he just turns into the Terminator and just absolutely
As you said,
dominates.
he's 22 years old. He's
Wow.
still got time to figure this out, but we've been saying that for a number of years now.
When did he hit the scene? When he was like 17, 18, something like that?
He's been around for a long time as a figure in American soccer. And again, it was supposed to be 2022 as part of a young group that he was going to have his influence. And then obviously that did not happen. And again, we can sit here and try to figure out who was responsible for all of that, but the whole thing was very messed up. And instead of growing from it, or okay, again, I also want to acknowledge that this is a written interview, a written quote. We have no sense of body language. We don't know what he said right before it or right after. It is completely just one item. And I don't like the quote, but I'm not going to, I'm going to suggest that he probably isn't in the best place with that for the perception of him by other people, by soccer fans. But fine, who cares? Go play, Gio. Do something for a very bad and struggling Gladbach team that makes us take notice of you, that makes Mauricio Pochettino think you can help the World Cup team in 2026, if that's what you want.
I'm glad you're given the benefit of the doubt that it being a written quote and whatnot. But if we're going to bust out our jump to conclusions map, how would you say his body language looked as he was giving this interview?
Oh, I don't want to.
No, we can move on about that. I was just thinking, like, have you ever seen positive body language out of this guy?
He is a wild watch, even playing a soccer game, because when he's on the field, he's not running a lot, but he's always asking for the ball. He's always he could have three defenders right on top of him, and he's still asking for the ball. I deserve give me the ball. I'll do it.
Love the confidence under duress from Gio Reyna, but we must move on. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Lots of comments on those long balls. Thank you for those. Keep those coming. Again, if we have a combination of new memberships or super thanks, we will extend this Wednesday episode of the show. Morning Kickaround subscribers, thank you so much. And members, MK Ultras, just $3.99 a month. Thank you so much for supporting this show. All right, we're halfway to go. We're going to come right back and analyze the many open job options in Major League Soccer and some candidates that might be in the mix for those coming up here on Hot Topic on Morning Kickaround. Hot Topic here on Morning Kickaround. I'm Robert. He's Jason. As we are in the postseason, the coaching carousel is in full swing in Major League Soccer. In just about alphabetical order, here are the open jobs: Atlanta United, Colorado, New England Revolution, New York Red Bulls, Sporting Kansas City, St. Louis, and LAFC. That's quite a few.
Yeah, obviously LAFC is pending because they're in the playoffs. They kick off tonight in their matchup against Austin, and Steve Cherundolo is still working. But we know he's leaving. He made that announcement. We have no reason to think he's going to go back on that. So there's a lot of jobs. I think we've seen a couple of rumors around Atlanta United. I've seen a name linked to Colorado, at least in terms of speculation, maybe from some fans. I don't know if there's been an interview or discussion there. We can come to that. We don't have Montreal on this list because Montreal just about a week and a half ago gave Marco Donadel the permanent job after he had taken over way back. When did he take over? He was like Montreal was one of the first clubs to pull the trigger.
I think it was it was the first month. It was pretty early in this show's existence when we talked about that, but it was only a couple weeks in. It was. I remember us remarking how could they have any evidence because there was only like 2 or 3 games, something like that.
Something like that. Things are always kind of messy and dramatic and chaotic and interpersonal behind the scenes in Montreal. But this is a lot of jobs. I mean, there's something to be said about the number of jobs opening and the pressure that is on to MLS head coaches. And I actually think, just to kind of get this out of the way, that it's possible we could see 1 or 2 more. Now, I don't have any inside information on this, and obviously check your local deep dive reporter or Tom Bogert or whoever you think you can trust with this news. But you have to wonder, Rob, if if Orlando's completely happy with Oscar Breja because they haven't met the expectations of that team and they've kind of bumped up against, well, we're maybe going to be a contender, and then things fall apart. This year, dropping down the table, getting beat in the play-in game against Chicago isn't a good look for Orlando. They made some changes. Luis Muzzi has left that club. He was the architect of this modern era of Orlando, and he has left the club. I think you could conceive of Toronto making another change. They keep doing it. They keep changing head coaches. Does Robin Fraser deserve another season? Maybe he does. There was some signs of life late in the year for Toronto, I suppose. You could also maybe toss in a Houston Dynamo and an RSL. Even though RSL made the playoffs, they get beat in the play-in game. Is Paulo Mastroeni just kind of the coach until something changes dramatically with their ambitions? I don't know. Until they spend a bunch of money. Houston, as I said, Ben Olsen, they've done some nice things. They had a good season last year, but of course, Ache leaving and some other things happening, Coco Carrasquilla being sold, made it tough for them this year. Is it Ben's fault that they missed the playoffs? Those are things. But let's talk about the names that might be linked to some of these jobs.
I think it's a little bit on the nose, but I don't see too many other rumors being bandied about as far as Atlanta. But the leading rumor in the room for Atlanta United is the return of Tata Martino, which, I mean, going back to an old job isn't always the right option. It feels like trying to spark up something that was once good. And that can be a dangerous situation. Not everyone's the same, different group of players, a little bit of a different atmosphere. Tata Martino has had a bumpy ride here and there since he was there already. He's had some health issues as well, if I recall. I don't know. I'm not sure. It seems like too easy of a story for Tata Martino and Atlanta United. That just seems like we don't know who to pick, so let's throw Tata out there.
I mean, it was interesting. It is that issue of getting the band back together, and can you get back to that? I mean, Miguel Almiron is back in Atlanta. Maybe he can find his top level again. I mean, he's plus 30 at this point, Miguel Almiron, so maybe it's past him to be a truly game-breaking player in Major League Soccer at the same level that he was when they won that title in 2018. But Tata is, at least there would be some good vibes around the team. At least there would be a sense of excitement, I think, from those original fans, the 17s that were there on day one in Atlanta, and obviously were on the ride to win the MLS Cup in 2018. But yeah, there's concerns there. I mean, Tata's still a good coach. He's still a good manager. No matter what happened in Mexico, no matter what happened in Miami, he obviously knows what he's doing. So I don't think that's a terrible idea. Like, I understand your trepidation with trying to reclaim past glory, but that's Giovanni Savaresi's name is out there. He's obviously going to be a candidate for a bunch of jobs. He's working MLS season pass at the moment, but he knows the league inside and out and has had some success. I think several of these teams are probably going to be kicking the tires on Gio Savaresi. Jim Curtin's out there for all of these jobs. At least all of the fans of these teams are going to hope Jim Curtin is a candidate for their job. But if you look through this, and we know that per Tom Bogert and per some people I've talked to, Jim Curtin he said no to New England reportedly after some discussions. I don't think he was ever really up for that job. Like, I don't think he was ever really interested in that job in New England. I think he's probably smarter than that when it comes to the way that club runs and some of the dramatic stuff that's happened there over the last couple of years. And they don't have their own stadium. They're playing in the football building, all that stuff.
The one thing that I wouldn't say Jim Curtin, he does not seem like a job hopper at all. So obviously, he lasted a long time in Philadelphia, and he doesn't seem like he's in any hurry to jump out into another position. Especially, and he seems very family oriented, and he's not going to compromise his family situation.
That's
hop on a
reason,
job that's not so hot.
And he, I don't remember when his contract ran out, but he's basically been collecting checks from Philadelphia while not having to work and being with his family and not wanting to leave the Philadelphia area where not only is he from, but as you said, he's got a young family that's comfortable there. I could see LAFC maybe making a run at Jim Curtin when Dolo leaves. There was some wild speculation about maybe Ange Postecoglou being up for that LA job. That's before he got the Nottingham Forest job, which obviously ended in disaster for Ange. Ange could go back to Celtic. Celtic needs a manager after Brendan Rodgers left. I did see in the chat that your guy Luke is saying that Wilfred Nancy could be leaving Columbus, that there could be an opening in Columbus. Celtic in Scotland, or one of two jobs in France, if that is on the table. And things seem to have gotten a little stale for Wilfred in Columbus this year. Not nearly as good, not great. They lost to Cincinnati in game one. We'll see if they can come back. There is that. The Red Bull job. Sandro Schwartz ended the run for the Red Bulls in the playoffs. He gets the axe because of it. I think their sporting director, one of their front office figures, just left because his wife has brain cancer. I wish the best for that. Julian de Guzman, Canadian International, is now running the show there at Red Bull. Is there somebody that kind of enters the picture? I will mention that Chris Armas has been at Red Bull before. I don't think they bring him back, but he's now out there as a candidate, at least for some of these jobs. Where the Rapids go, Rob? Where the Rapids go? Peter Vermees is out there too. Okay, and
it almost
this is what I was
seems
going to
like
mention.
the top three candidates that so looking up rumors and candidates for all these jobs, it seems like almost every single one, the top candidates are Gio Savarese, Tata Martino, or Jim Curtin. Those seem like the top three golden targets for all of them. Maybe that's just all speculation across the board because those are the most obvious ones. But Colorado, our friend Matt at Burgundy Wave, his suggestions, because he said he was actually surprised that Chris Armas was let go despite their spat at the end of the season. He suggested that assistant Chris Little should be a candidate. He also suggested Brendan Burke, who's had success with the switchbacks as well. Those are his suggestions.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing a second level manager in American soccer get an opportunity to move up into the MLS game. I mean, Troy Lesane got that opportunity going from New Mexico. He had to be an assistant in Red Bull before he got the Red Bull job on an interim basis and then got hired in DC. And obviously that didn't work out for him in DC, although I think that's more about DC United and the organization than it was about Troy Lesane. And I feel bad for Troy, who I really like. Is Brendan Burke a name? Is Ben Pierman a name that could be out there? I would love to see. Is Danny Cruz going to get a look, a hard look by anybody after everything that he's done at Louisville?
You talk about good for the game.
Logical.
You talk about good for the game. More coaches being able to move up the ranks from the USL to Major League Soccer, you'd argue is good for the game in general.
Yeah,
I see a suggestion that would be absolute Hollywood stuff. Bernardo Castellano suggesting Jurgen Klopp for the Red Bulls. I mean, that would be amazing. I would love that, but he's
not gonna do it. Thank you, Bernardo. Obviously, his eyes are wide because it's not going to happen. But is there a sense that Jurgen is going to be directly involved in finding the next Red Bull manager?
I want New York Red Bulls to be better. I mean, I feel like they're on the edge of being good for so long, but just never quite tipping over the scale.
Here's another question. Which of these jobs is most attractive? Just on the face. Which job is like what? It's got to be LAFC because
I was going to say that's so easy. That's so easy.
Now, after that, let's take LAFC, a contender for MLS Cup, still in the playoffs. None of these other teams are in the playoffs, hence their decisions. What other jobs? Can you rank the other six?
Am I a coach that is like, I want the best and I'm driving and be aesthetic, or am I chilling? Am I like, I just want to
whatever you think is the most important thing here? I mean, it's facilities, it's fan base, it's resources, it's mentality, it's ambition, it's market. Where you want to live. I mean, some of these places may be less attractive to live in than other places.
All right, so if I'm going to rank bottom to top, so New England is my bottom.
Okay.
Then it would probably be St. Louis. Sorry if I'm creating
enemies here. Why is that?
I just don't. I don't know.
I would put Colorado below St. Louis in my mind.
But I have chill in my mind, and it seems pretty laid back to be in Colorado. But it's a toss up. Colorado, not a whole ton of success there. I mean, do you think that they're on the edge of a turnaround? What is it?
Well, they wouldn't have fired Chris Armas if they're on the edge of a turnaround. They just paid money for Paxton Aronson. So you have that weapon, but filling the roster around him and giving him what he needs to succeed is the big question for Colorado, who again, despite the cronky money, haven't spent to keep up with the LAFCs and some of these other teams.
Yeah, and there's probably a little bit more enthusiasm and exuberance and a brand new stadium in St. Louis. So I could see,
yes,
St. Louis ranking higher than that. Sporting Kansas City, obviously a fervent fan base, and New York Red Bulls, they got a great stadium and they're obviously in a very attractive city.
I would go I would go New England like you. I would go Colorado there. I'd probably say Sporting. I have St. Louis higher than Sporting in my mind. Um, not a ton of reason for that, other than the newer stadium and the downtown kind of location and the fan base that's still pretty excited about that. Not that Sporting doesn't have fans, but they've been pretty bad for a while, and they clearly have frittered away some of that enthusiasm. I would put Red Bull number 2 among the teams that aren't LAFC because you're in the New York market. You've got the backing of Red Bull Global. If you can convince them to actually give you something to work with, you're going to be working with Jurgen Klopp, presumably, at least on some level. And then obviously Atlanta's number 1 because they're going to spend more money than everybody else.
Other than Atlanta, or would you agree that Red Bull has support, like waiting for a good team? Like, obviously, they've had their ups and downs with attendances and support being kind of like running out of patience to a degree. Do you think if they get the right coach and they start the season next year well, do you think that an influx of enthusiasm could come back to New York Red Bulls, or is that ship kind of sailed? I mean, has it been too long of mediocrity?
No. I mean, look, there's always a possibility of building something. I don't know exactly what the man. I don't know what exactly look. It's a difficult place to make people pay attention to you in the New York City area, right? Obviously, this is a Jersey team. We've talked about this many times over the years that kind of refuses to just accept that they're Jersey and lean into that rather than make this thing we're a New York team. NYCFC, when they open their building, when they open that stadium in Queens, is going to suck up all the pro soccer oxygen in New York for the most part. In the city, I'm not talking about across the river. If you are smart and you're Red Bull, you make yourself the team of New Jersey. You find a way to lean into that identity. I don't know how easy that is or why they were not willing to do that. Obviously, it's a global brand that is trying to glean some extra marketing weight from having their name on this team in MLS. But of course, since the Cahill, Thierry Henry, all that era, Rafa Marquez, they haven't been willing to be kind of aggressive with big name players. And there's nothing wrong with Choupo-Moting. He had a good season, but
Was that money well spent?
I don't think it was money poorly spent, but it's not sexy money. Does that make sense? It's not.
Yeah.
It's not what Atlanta does with young talent. It's not what LAFC does with Sun. It's not what some of these bigger teams have or more ambitious teams have done. So if you can get Red Bull to put more ambition into that particular club, it's a pretty attractive job. If they can get people in the building, right? That's the thing. Start winning games, play good soccer, find a way to get people into that building because it's a ridiculous situation. They have one of the best small soccer stadiums maybe on the planet, and they can't fill it up.
We're making some enemies in the chat here. John Stark, Boston area is great. $36 million training center and averaging over 23K. But my favorite part of this comment is one of my favorite phrases at the end. Geez Louise.
John, I went to college in Boston. I respect Boston. I love Boston as a place. If they can get the stadium built that is, T accessible and you can tap into the various diaspora communities, Portuguese, Brazilians, Latinos, students, then Boston will be maybe the best soccer city in the country. Like it could be that. It very well could be. The potential of Boston is through the roof. But as long as they're playing in a giant football stadium, that distance away from Boston, because it's not Boston. They're playing in Foxborough. And yes, I know that's where the Patriots play, but it's still not meeting that potential. Now, if the new head coach of the New England Revolution was given a promise that 35,000 in a football stadium is not, John, that's great. It's a big number. Very exciting for soccer in the area. I understand. I'm not saying that there's not something happening there. There's not something good there. It's just not what it could be. And some of these other places it's just a matter of perception. It's just a matter of personal preference. But in terms of Boston, they have been teasing this thing and trying to figure out the stadium for so long now. Just a little personal anecdote. Years ago, probably 6 or 7 years ago, doing the radio show that I do, I was actually doing the American Soccer Focus show in the afternoons on SiriusXM FC, the United States of Soccer, that I was hosting by myself. And I talked about the Revs a lot. And people like Rob Stone who is from New England, would call up to complain about the Revs. This is before Bruce was there, obviously before the whole Richie Williams situation, before lots of things, before the training facility, which is an investment. That's an investment, John. Thank you for bringing that up. But I got a call from then head coach Brad Friedel. Brad Friedel is the kind of guy that will pick up the phone and call you if he hears you talking about him on the radio. I'm not sure that's always the best move. I'm not sure that's always what these coaches need to be doing. Brad Friedel called me in the middle of a workout. I was in the middle of a workout, and he's like, "We're building the stadium. It's going to happen. You don't, just know that all these negative things you're saying about the Revs aren't going to be true for much longer because we're building the stadium." Again, Rob, that was 7 years ago. 7 years ago. It's not Red Bull Arena, right? That's right. It's a sportsillustrated.com building. I don't know what it's called anymore. All right. Anyway, Rob, let's move on.
Yeah, I was going to say a couple of other names that were bandied about outside of the MIG three that were up for seemingly every job: Severise, Martino, and Curtin. Josh Wolf's name and Peter Vermees's name thrown out in quite a few of those as well.
Right, of course. Right.
But
the question of whether or not Peter Vermees wants to be in control of everything is kind of out there as a part of that discussion. If he just wants to coach, there are some opportunities maybe for him, and I don't think he would be a bad get in some of these places. He's not going to get a lot of people excited just because he is the furniture in Major League Soccer. He was for so long in Kansas City, but I think he could do much worse than Peter Vermees.
All right. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, subscribers. The numbers are doing great. We're on our way to 5,000 subscribers to the channel. Thank you so much for supporting. And the members are growing too. MK Ultras, thank you for contributing and supporting the show to another level. You can check us out on social media at Kickaround on all the platforms: X, Instagram, Blue Sky, TikTok, and there might be some other ones out there as well. Thank you so much, and check those out if you want to support us on social media. And if you want to write us a note, morningkickaround@gmail.com. All right, we got one more segment to go. Let's talk some Messi and loosening the purse strings in Culture Wars here on Morning Kickaround. Welcome on in. This is Culture Wars here on Morning Kickaround. Leo Messi sat down for a rare interview in which he said something that, many of us think, but it means more coming from a player of his stature, saying that Major League Soccer would benefit from loosening the purse strings and relaxing the restrictions on bringing in players, and many teams would bring in many more important players if they do so.
I mean, it's kind of funny to hear, Messi said this, considering the amount of money he's making in a league where nobody has ever, how I don't have a number in front of me, Rob, but it's not, it's not crazy to be like, well, Messi probably makes more than 28 teams' entire payrolls in Major League Soccer. I mean, it's something, I'm sure it's something like that, right? He himself is getting paid handsomely, and his club has kind of been known to mess around and go around the rules just a little bit at times. And look, I'm one of those people who is very sanguine about breaking rules in Major League Soccer. People get very up in arms about this, and I definitely think that there's a fairness factor here. And if your team is following the rules and Lionel Messi and Inter Miami are not, you're going to feel aggrieved, particularly when they win things and maybe your team doesn't. But this is a league that needs rule breakers. This is a league that needs clubs that are willing to step outside the current constraints in order to force the league to respond so we can break open things and clubs can spend money at a higher level to improve the quality of MLS. And even maybe beyond that, it is never wise to restrain the ambitious people who want to actually do more. Like, how is that a good strategy for Major League Soccer to be like, no, Jorge, sorry, actually, you can only spend this much money. You can't get better. We don't want your team to be better. Stop trying to be better, Jorge Mas. What do you think you're doing here? No, that's terrible. That's a terrible idea. So Lionel Messi is right He does. I don't know that he has a deep understanding of all of this either. Why would he? Why would he need to? Is he effectively the GM of Inter Miami? Probably, but I don't think he's sitting down with the paperwork, right? That is being handled by somebody else.
I'm not sure if this is 100% accurate, but on a cursory search, it says that Messi earns more than 21 teams' combined salaries, and it has a 3.7% of the total salary for the league. So, to your point, it is a bit rich for him to say that, but he's not wrong. He's not wrong at all. Like, think about how many times there's been a single player dropped into a Major League Soccer team, and that one standout player has changed the fortunes of that. I'd say Jermaine Jones is one that pops into my mind. We were talking about the Revs earlier. Jermaine Jones joining the Revs made them a competitive team at the drop of the hat. He transferred to Colorado, and out of nowhere, they probably had their one or two standout seasons that they went to the playoffs and they were a contender. So bringing in higher stature players to more teams across the league will obviously improve the entertainment value and the quality of the player, but it's not the top level. But we got to keep on bringing up the basement here.
Well, so Leo's talking about. I don't think all teams have the power to sign players who they want. Limitations, rules. I think that if they were given the freedom, many more important players would come and help the growth of soccer in the United States. I mean, it's speculation, and of course, yeah. Look, people like America for a number of reasons when they come here, and one of Major League Soccer's strengths is that it does have the ability to attract players who might not otherwise consider playing in this kind of league because it's in America, right? So, of course, if teams were allowed to spend more money, they could attract more players. Maybe not like Lionel Messi, but players of a higher caliber. But I don't think that's where I have an issue with the MLS spending rules. Meaning, right now, 3 DPs, and obviously there are different approaches teams can take based on the way the rules are written at the moment. But teams can't go out and sign a big name player or two, or maybe 3. What they can't do is surround those players with players of a higher level of quality throughout their roster. Now that's come up. It's grown. It's gotten better. We've taken steps. TAM has changed that. GAM has changed that on some level. Over the last couple of years, decade, or whatever it's been. But there's the idea that there need to be designations. Like, you're this kind of player and you're that kind of player. And because you're that kind of player, you can't get paid more than this amount of money. Or you're this kind of player, which means you fit into this category and this is your salary range. Like, no, just get rid of all of that. Give teams, create a salary floor in order to maintain some sort of level of competitive integrity, but have a ceiling. And if you want to do a soft cap, there are ways to do a soft cap, right? Major League Baseball has a luxury tax. You go over the cap, you got to pay into a pot that gets spread out across the league. That's one way to do a soft cap. You want to, there are things you can do. It's, to me, MLS rules have always been too Byzantine, too complicated, too difficult to understand. There are super nerds and sickos who will dive into it, and more power to them. I'm glad we have them. Every sport needs them. But we need to make this more accessible for fans to understand what their clubs can do when they want to improve their side. And we should empower clubs. Major League Soccer should empower clubs to go and sign players as they see fit within their budget. I'm not saying like get rid of budget completely. That may be a recipe for disaster, and it would certainly upend competitive integrity or the parity that has been so part of MLS's identity for the last 30 years. But do something to release this idea that you have to sign players in specific categories. That's too much.
Yeah, the categorization really limits it. Like, what if you're one kind of player and then you have rapid improvement and you're boxed into that certain thing? MLS used to have the bad reputation of kind of like trapping players, and they wouldn't be able to leave the league once they were in there, and they couldn't be able to leave freely. But also, I think that if those categorizations are removed, I think that would benefit the domestic American player, because there's all these sort of different kind of categories and what they cost of different things. It kind of makes aspirational homegrown players. I think it makes it a little bit more difficult.
Well, so that may be true. Absolutely. You're kind of restricting the way that clubs can operate within those areas. Obviously, there's incentives to bring through academy players under the current system because they cost less. right? That's a thing that you can say, well, they're incentivizing clubs to develop their own players but that's true around the world, regardless of the salary budget rules that exist in any given place. I want to address one of these from KY. Parity is a red herring. Now, I think that goes just a touch too far. Like, I think that just goes a tiny bit too far, but it's not wrong to say that parity is just a mechanism for controlling costs on some level, that it's an excuse for Major League Soccer. Like, hey, we want to maintain parity. We want our teams to all feel like they have a chance to win the championship, and we don't want to become Spain or some of these places where spending wins the title every year. We want to be, we want to be like the NFL, right? The NFL is the model. We talked about this recently. The NFL is the model, and the model is everybody's got some sort of chance. But at the same time, obviously, from a management perspective, from an owner perspective, from a spending perspective, if you say, well, we got to maintain parity, then that justifies your salary budget rules, because now everybody has to operate within the same constraints, because that's how we maintain this idea that nobody is too much better than anybody else.
But at the same time, that also restricts greatness.
It does. Of course it does. Exactly. That's the trade-off you're making. And I don't know if it's worth it anymore. Right? I don't know if it's worth it anymore for the league to continue to focus on this idea that parity necessitates salary restraint, which, obviously restrains greatness. But there are other ways to sort of introduce parity, right? There are other ways to or maintain some level of parity, even as you are restricting clubs less, especially the ambitious ones, from spending more of what they want to spend. Playoffs are parity creating environments. Upsets happen. Now, maybe they won't happen all the time, but there is chaos in over a 90-minute soccer match, right? There is variability in a 90-minute soccer match that doesn't exist over the course of a full season. And if you're saying, well, we're determining our champion based on a full season of matches, and that's it, that's how we determine our champion, then the team that spends the most is probably going to win more often than not. And therefore, the idea of parity kind of goes out the window. But if you're saying, like, we're going to play this number of games, then we're going to have a playoff tournament. It's going to be either knockout or best of 3 or whatever, but we're introducing variability here. You're going to have upsets. You're going to have the Giants beating the Patriots. Like, you're going to still have the opportunity for clubs that don't feel as ambitious or don't spend as much money to succeed. So, and which is, I'm fine with playoffs. So again, there's reasons to kind of try to manipulate this and massage this without restricting the ability of clubs who are ambitious from finding a way to be better.
Yeah, and we're getting some suggestions in the chat here. There's a lot of different people suggesting different kinds of caps. So if you, Jason, suggesting different caps, so there is people already pouring lots of thought and ideas into what Messi's talking about. So, like I said, he's not really saying anything groundbreaking here, but just kind of voicing what many people think out there already. Will that be amongst the changes? MLS has been kind of foreshadowing that, there's a looming changes coming to roster makeup in addition to possible calendar stuff. Is this part of it? I mean, I would love for there to be, what right now we got 3, 4, 5 really, really top players, and then good players for a full squad. But the depth isn't there. So like a team like Columbus that gets some of their good players banged up or transferred out, they become a shell of it. But if you change those spending habits, I feel like the squads overall could improve. And then if you still have VPs, then you could still have stars, but a better squad.
So there are a couple of things, angles to attack this from. One of them is, what's the point? Like, why do you want the teams to be better? No, we have to start there. We have to start basic. Okay. What's the point of teams getting better? Now, if your argument is that better soccer attracts more fans, then that's why you do it. That's why you do it.
Because there's bazillion soccer fans in America, just not as many MLS fans.
Well, okay, there's also maybe an argument that those soccer fans wouldn't care even if the league was much better, even if the players were better, because they're not tuned to that frequency. They're tuned to European football or Mexican soccer or whatever it is. They're just not going to pay attention. Like, if you don't think you can get those fans, then it's not worth it to spend a bunch more money on your salaries in a league where revenues have not yet gotten to the point where it's sort of, the argument is out the window that you shouldn't spend more money, because this is also important that, how many teams are profitable in Major League Soccer, right? Is that a thing that we should care about when we talk about this? When Messi brings up this argument, but then again, sports inherently are money losers in a lot of places. And, if you are chasing the NFL, well, good luck. Nobody's going to get to that level, those kind of things. So again, if your argument is better soccer equals more fans, then that's why you do it. Now, if you think that being better on the field, and especially your top level teams being better on the field, makes you look better in tournaments like CONCACAF Champions Cup, or the thing that has now entered the picture, the Club World Cup, well, then do that, right? Do that because it's just a matter of being competitive and winning and all those things. And I don't, you could probably just be as reductive as, if clubs want to spend money, who should stop them? Why should you stop them from spending money if they want to spend money? But that's not really how sports business works, particularly when you're talking about a single entity league like Major League Soccer.
Are they scared of falling behind? Or I know there's a lot of inherent fear of the NASL thing, rampant spending, overspending, just crashing and burning, or some teams just afraid of being left behind. So they want to, pull their shirt back, so to speak, and not let them just jet ahead, not become the Dodgers.
That's the thing. But even the Dodgers are not going to win every World Series. But of course, the fear is that you end up with a league where you do have one or two teams potentially just trading the title back and forth. And is that something that is going to be attracted to American sports fans? Right? Soccer fans may be able to make their peace with it if you have been paying attention to soccer for a long time, or you appreciate what Barcelona, Real Madrid are in Spain or whatever. But I definitely think that there is a reasonable fear. Again, it might be just excuses. It may be the red herring that KY was talking about earlier with parity, but there's at least some reason to be concerned that in a country where soccer is still trying to prove itself as a viable professional sporting enterprise and as a culturally important, that if you suddenly let one or two teams zoom off and win all the titles, that a lot of these places will stop caring about the game, because Americans will find it harder to make peace with their higher level in the hierarchy. Right? Again, I'll bring this to me. Fulham fan decided to support Fulham. You know what? I have to make peace with the fact that Fulham's not going to win a Premier League title, probably ever, and unless something dramatically changes. But I'm also somebody who can appreciate what that is and the context of where Fulham is in the Premier League and what other things Fulham can play for. Our casual American soccer fans, American sports fans, when Sporting Kansas City can no longer compete because LAFC is winning every title or New York is winning every title, are they going to be like, yep, I'm totally going out to the stadium every day, every match day to support my team? And we're fighting for whatever, the US Open Cup this year, and that's enough for me. I don't know the answer to that question.
I don't think that's totally lost on American sports fans, because, think about how many college teams in any sport really going into the season, you have just about no shot of winning, until the last 2 years. Who would have thought that Indiana would have a chance of winning a Big Ten, or let alone be in the national conversation?
Sure.
So
what had to change for that to happen? Right?
Drastic changes. That's a fair point. A bad example of my point. But there is plenty of teams that 99% of their heart, they know that they're just trying to beat their rival, be about 500, or just have a couple good days out.
I think the concern also has to be that if you decide to do this, right, if you take the shackles off, if you say go spend, now obviously, again, there are different ways to approach it. It's not like free for all, but even if you said, okay, your salary budget is now 50 million or 40 million or whatever we think of as the maximum that makes sense for an MLS team right now. If you do that, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. You can't do it and then say, oh, wait a second. This one team outspent everybody by 4. We can't 4 times. We can't let that happen anymore, because they're going to dominate. They're going to attract all the best players. And you have cities that have financial advantages that also have geographic advantages. Right? One of the reasons parity is a thing is because it helps a team like Columbus or Kansas City or Dallas compete with LA and New York. Because if you think about it, top level foreign players, they know 3 cities in America, or they are willing to those are the places they really want to play. You want to play in Miami, you want to play in New York, you want to play in LA, generally speaking.
That's why Muller's so weird in Vancouver.
Well, but good for him, right? For being open-minded. Vancouver's an amazing place. definitely players should consider those places, and maybe it's on those teams to figure out how to make themselves attractive. But there's an advantage to being in LA. There's an advantage to being in Miami. So if you then say, well, those teams who already have a baked in advantage are now making more money than anybody else and have owners who are willing to spend more than anybody else, then you just risk your league being dominated by those teams. And again, like in an abstract, it's kind of hard to get a grasp on how we would feel about it if that was the case. If we would be bored, or if American soccer fans would tune out, or to the flip side, the other argument, which is probably just as legitimate, we would have great teams and people want to see great teams that would make the league more attractive.
Yeah, I mean, talking about great teams, I mean, we're talking about a duopoly in Spain. There's the Barcelona Real Madrid thing. You know, it's pretty obvious. Outside of that, sometimes the other Madrid team, Atletico Madrid, sometimes they get in the mix there, but that's still compelling. I mean, but a lot of the times those Spanish fans, like, they have their own team, but in the background they're one of those two teams.
But okay,
so it's
the other
almost like a
part of
separate
this
competition.
The other part of this, and we're just going on and on and on, and it's but the other part of this I think is fascinating from my perspective is that a lot of these places, obviously there's the cultural weight that the club carries within the city, within the town, within the region, which is sort of like I would compare it to maybe college sports or college football here in the US. MLS teams don't have that cultural weight. We want to see them build it. We want to see them become that important. Obviously, they're competing for that identity with the other pro sports teams that exist in this country in those major markets, right? That's where MLS is. Obviously, you can have smaller towns where soccer has a better chance of kind of rising above. But if you are an MLS team and you're competing with an NFL team or an NBA team or a Major League Baseball team for attention, it's really hard to become the heartbeat of the city in the same way that a team in Spain or a team in England or a team in Germany might be for that particular town. And those fans, not only are they attached to those teams in a way that means no matter what happens, we're going out and supporting them. Take Schalke, for example. 60,000 people show up every week. They're playing in the second division in Germany. It also means that you make peace with the identity of your team as long as they're doing things, quote unquote, the right way. As long as you don't feel like you're being exploited by the ownership, by the leadership, by whoever, you can make peace with the identity. Like, oh, we're a team that just develops local players. That's who we are. We may never win a title, but I'm good with that. I like the fact that my team is developing local players who come through and show up for my first team. And then even if they go on one day to play at Real Madrid or Barcelona, at least I got to see them play for my guys. That identity, that the ability to grow those kind of identities is something I really want for American soccer. But I think there's danger, obviously, in there of the gap between trying to start that and when it actually kicks in, where people still show up 20, 25,000 strong to support a team that, again, has suddenly been, quote unquote, relegated to not ever being a champion.
Leo Messi sparking some American soccer debate here on Morning Kickaround. You love to see it. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. I think, to your point, Jason, we could go, endlessly on this topic.
But I mean, we didn't get any members today, unfortunately. So I could go do more. This could be an incredible debate, but we didn't get to the goal. So, join the Discord, become a member, an ultra after the fact, and we'll get into it. We'll chop it up.
Yeah, we got bonus content on the channel. So if you are an MK Ultra, you can get one of our fellow MK Ultras post-game report on the scene in Cincinnati. Good, concise report from one of our very first Ultras, Luke Zagorski. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Plenty of conversation going on. And we will check out the final round one, game one tonight. We'll be through there. Friday, we got a great guest lined up. We can finally look at the second games of this first round. The USL playoffs are in our midst. We'll dig into that a little bit more. Next week, we got some great stuff lined up there. Well, so if you haven't subscribed yet, hit subscribe. If you'd like to become an MK Ultra, and if not, tell your family, friends, your pets, and your acquaintances about Morning Kickaround and tune in. So until Friday, everybody, please enjoy your soccer.